During the winter months of the 53-52 BC year, Caesar returned to his provincial administrative duties in Cisalpine Gaul. Following the revolt led by Ambiorix of the Eburones tribe, Caesar had remained in Gaul during the 54-53 BC winter, neglecting for nearly 2 years the proconsular duties owed to his provinces. Despite Caesar's brutal punishment of the revolting tribes, Gaul was anything but pacified. Because Caesar rode from tribe to tribe, allowing his men to slaughter civilians, brutalize women, burn fields, steal livestock, and enact his own genocide against the offending Eburones, Gaul's tribes began to finally get the picture. Their feudalism paved the way for Caesar, who capitalized on that factionalism to first divide Gaul's anti-Roman from his pro-Roman tribes, and then cut a bloody path of conquest down that line of division. He had used the Aedui against the Helvetii, and then against the Bellovaci, the Remi against Suessines, and the Atrebates against the Menapii and Morini tribes. If Gaul was to survive Caesar, she had to unite. No more fighting between the tribes. The unequivocal welfare of the Gallic people depended on it. The Carnutes tribe, who were the protectors of Gaul's holy lands, where the Druids met each year to mediate between the tribes, began Gaul's next revolt. Believing Caesar, who was still in Cisalpine Gaul, would be distracted by the murder of Publius Clodius and its subsequent effect on Rome's politics, the Carnutes assassinated their king. His name was Tasgetius, and he had been granted kingship over the Carnutes by Caesar 3 years earlier. After his death, the Carnutes then removed Rome from their lands by killing every Roman merchant within their territory. Simultaneously, those tribes who supplied Caesar's grain for his wintering legions also came under attack. In the neighbouring Arverni lands, in the town of Gergovia, Arverni's young king, Vercingetorix, urged his people to join in the Carnutes' revolt. By convincing more of Gaul's tribes to join the resistance, Vercingetorix assembled Gaul's first army and began marching his forces toward the Roman town of Narbo in Transalpine Gaul. Caesar's legions once again were wintering in Belgic territory under the command of Titus Labienus and were too far away for Caesar to make use of from his post in Cisalpine Gaul. Hastily raising a force of raw recruits and combining them with local militia and even mercenaries, Caesar immediately set out to try and reach Narbo before the Gallic army could invade. Forging a path through the snow-covered mountains, Caesar succeeded in reaching Transalpine Gaul, causing the Gallic army to pull back, away from the Roman border. From Narbo, Caesar sent out what cavalry he had to try and distract the rebellion in the area, hoping they would think he had arrived with his forces. But Caesar needed to unite with his legions, wintering in Belgic territory. Disguising himself as a Gaul, Caesar, taking only a small contingent, stealthily made his way through enemy territory and finally arrived at his legion's winter camp. Vercingetorix, in an attempt to deprive Caesar of the opportunity to feed his army, began a policy of attacking the Oppidi, or fortified Iron Age settlements, where Gaul's food was stored. Beginning with the Boii tribe whose Oppidi supplied grain to Caesar's army, Vercingetorix laid siege to their capital, Gorgobina, leaving 2 regions of raw recruits behind to guard their winter camp's food supplies. Caesar took his remaining 8 legions and began attacking every Oppidium he could locate throughout Belgic territory. That Caesar would take so many detours hinted to Vercingetorix that Caesar was already short of food, and so abandoning his siege of Gorgobina, Vercingetorix ordered all the villages in central Gaul to evacuate. Then, in an attempt to starve Caesar's army, Vercingetorix ordered all the villages burned, along with their surrounding wheat fields. Instead of attacking Caesar outright, Vercingetorix used his army to attack the larger Oppidi. To prevent Caesar from getting a hold of their supplies, Vercingetorix commanded his army to ambush supply trains coming from Rome's allied strongholds within Belgic territory, and to harass Caesar's foragers, preventing them from even gathering food from the ground. The thousands upon thousands of citizens who had evacuated their villages on the orders of Vercingetorix fled to the nearest fortified settlement of Avaricum, When Vercingetorix arrived there with his army, he tried to persuade the citizens to evacuate so that he could burn the supplies and be gone before Caesar's army arrived. But the tribal warriors refused to abandon Avaricum. They had already lost one oppidum at Novia Dunum and were not about to give up their last bastion of security in central Gaul. In the end, Vercingetorix stayed. Though he did not enter the town, his army remained in the area, endeavouring to defend Avaricum. The town was surrounded on 3 sides by marsh, with dry land on only one side. When Caesar arrived, his 8 legions built their camp on the dry land, and then began construction of siege equipment. Besides building towers, Caesar instructed his men to create a large wooden frame, which would act as the foundation for an earthworks ramp, after the fashion of one he had employed to take the stronghold of Cassivellaunus in Britannia. Unfortunately, Caesar's forces, getting by on reduced rations, were hungry, and now the constant rain was slowing the construction of their siege equipment, wasting precious time needed to take the town before they starved. To assist the starvation of Caesar's troops, Vercingetorix made certain Caesar could not receive grain from another source, by camping his army so they could overtake any incoming supply trains. He also had his cavalry harass every attempt made by Caesar's men to forage for food near Avaricum. As Caesar's siege towers and ramp neared completion, Vercingetorix sent a legion's worth of men to help the town of Avaricum. By sneaking through the thick marshlands, Vercingetorix's men were able to bypass Caesar's army and further fortify the town. As Caesar's ramp came close to reaching the top of Avaricum's walls, the Gallic reinforcements built the town's walls higher. As the Gallic reinforcements extended the height of Avaricum's walls, others dug tunnels, leading beneath Caesar's ramp. Setting fire under the ramp in the middle of the night, Caesar's wooden frame began to smoulder. To help the ramp collapse even faster, Gallic men rushed through Avaricum's portcullis. Carrying torches and buckets of pitch, they made every attempt to light the top of the ramp on fire, as well as trying to burn the siege towers. Caesar's forces were pulled from their beds, rushed out to defend the siege works. Throughout the night, Caesar's forces battled against Gaul's continual attempts to light the ramp on fire. Having successfully defended the ramp, Caesar's men repaired the damage the following day, and eventually finished adding the necessary height to get over Avaricum's raised walls. Completely out of food, not only was Caesar ready to take Avaricum, he desperately needed to. Despite the fact the next day began with torrential rains which flooded the grounds, turning Caesar's ramp into a mudslide, Caesar ordered the assault. 25 days after arriving outside Avaricum, Caesar's men advanced. Using battering rams, Caesar's men punched a hole through the wall. The Gauls, who did not expect Caesar to move in such weather, were taken by surprise. Romans came pouring through the hole, as well as up the ramp. Avaricum's walls were finally breached. Retreating, the Gauls gathered into a defensive formation in the streets, prepared to make their final stand against Caesar's forces. But Caesar's men did not go down to street level. Remaining on the walls, they circled the town from above, and then rained missile fire down on Avaricum's defence forces. Those not felled by arrows or javelins scattered throughout the city, seeking places to hide. Caesar's men then moved to street level, where what was left of the defensive line was quickly overpowered. Once again, Caesar was outraged by the fact that the Gauls had dared rise up against him. As he had done following the revolt of Ambiorix, Caesar likewise punished Avaricum. In order to make them pay for 25 days' worth of siege work in the rain, Caesar allowed his men to run wild through the town. The people, many of whom were refugees evacuated from their villages on the orders of Vercingetorix, were massacred in the streets. Gallic soldiers hiding in buildings were found and killed. Women were violated before being put to death, and even children were killed. At Caesar's behest, as punishment for defying him, over 40,000 Gauls were slaughtered in the town of Avaricum. To Vercingetorix, the loss of Avaricum was a devastating setback. He had almost succeeded in starving Caesar's army, and if he could have convinced Avaricum to evacuate so that he could have destroyed the stores of food, the Romans would have been finished. Now, Caesar was strong again, restored by Avaricum's supplies.